Welcome to Birthing the Gifts. I am clinical psychologist Dr. Kyla Holmes. Here at Birthing the Gifts, we provide a safe and compassionate space to grow your God-given gifts. In this interview series, we discuss the process of giving birth to your gifts. So today we have with us Dr. Rhonda Mattox. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Mattox. Dr. Mattox is a board-certified physician with 2 decades of experience in direct patient care. She is an integrative behavioral health psychiatrist and mental health consultant to primary care providers. Prior to that, she was an associate professor with dual appointments in the family medicine and psychiatry departments at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, where she served as an integrative behavioral health psychiatrist consultant and taught family medicine residents and medical students. So y'all, I can go on and on. Rhonda has been in so many hats that she wears beautifully and just using her gifts in amazing ways. I think, Rhonda, when I first heard your name, it was in community. It was out when I was doing work in the community around mental health. And I just kept hearing your name, kept hearing your name. And so it was a pleasure when I finally got to meet you, and obviously been getting to know you over the last couple of years, and not just an amazing psychiatrist, but amazing person and woman of God and many things. So I look forward to learning from you today and hopefully discussing it in a way that will encourage and inspire others to birth their gifts. So I've been talking about mental health. It's clear from that introduction that you've been involved in elevating the conversation about mental health and emotional wellness. But if we could start here, like at what point in your life, so when we talk about birthing the gifts, we talk about first, in order to birth the gift, it's like people in some ways have to know they have a gift to birth, right? That is something within them that they're passionate about. They have an assignment, something stirring up within. So when did you know, at what point, what age, where were you when you knew something related to mental health, medicine, psychiatry? When did that become clear that that was going to be your path?
I can't say for sure, but I do know that when I was in the 8th grade, I had a teacher, Dinah Funderburg, say, whatever it is that you would do for free, you should weave that into your career path, because even when times are hard, you will enjoy it. You will do it so well that the money will come. And at the time, I didn't have an aha moment. But as I was growing up, I grew up with a really interesting slate of characters around me. And I saw a lot of stuff. So people did not scare me. And I had respect for diverse types of people, the kind of people that might scare other people or that might give people pause. Those were people who I saw frequently and had high regard for, and they poured into me. And even though some of them had unsavory lifestyles, they always spoke good things. Oh, you're going to be somebody. Oh, you are somebody. And so, I remember the bootlegger, like, I'm going to give you $1 for every A you make. So my concept of some of the people that, looking back on, I might not even want my daughter to be around them, right? But I saw them, developed a respect for them. And so when I engaged people that other people might throw away, I was very respectful. I treated them like someone would treat a VIP, and I listened. And because I listened in a really non-judgmental way of their lifestyle, was really confidential, didn't share their business. And I'm talking about even in like the 7th or 8th or 9th grade, I was hearing about,
yeah. That. I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. In like middle school, is this what you're saying? You were like this teenager doing this. Okay.
So I literally have been the person that people went to share. I mean, I became a psychiatrist, but I've always been a confidant. As long as I can remember, that people would share, and I wouldn't share their secrets. There are some, there are people who are dead, and I still have their secrets that I have not shared. And so they were talking to me about being molested, about having abortions, and this was at a young age. So when I found out And I was always on the receiving end. But then I had a tutor, a math tutor. I was taking a class who did that for me and who listened to me. And it was like water in a thirsty desert place. And so when I realized what that did for me, I kind of got an idea of what it was doing, what me listening to others was doing. And so when I found out that you could get paid to listen to people, I was like, that's it. Sign me up.
So you knew. So it was something that you were drawn to, or that you enjoyed even before you knew this was something that you can get paid for.
And yeah, I mean, it is something that I just do. It's just who I am, right? And so to be able to be paid for doing just who I am, because I consider this ministry. This isn't work for me. This is ministry. And so it's truly a gift to be able to be paid well for the work that I have just always enjoyed doing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. If we could just, I want to go back to something that you said, but before we do that, when you say it doesn't feel like work is ministry, can you kind of unpack that word a little bit when you say it's ministry? What does that mean when you say not work, but ministry?
So so when I'm doing ministry, I'm invigorated by the work that I'm doing. I may be pouring into you, but pouring into you is also filling my cup as well, if that makes sense. And so ministry is what I do for the kingdom of God. It is what I do because I am a child of God, and it's a part of me just expanding the kingdom of God. And as I'm saying that, I have no idea who your audience is, and so this may not they may not understand what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is, in life there are things that are bigger than you, and when you're working towards something that's bigger than you, then it feels like an investment. So I don't feel like I'm spending my time, I'm investing my time.
I love it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as you do that, it's like that's fulfilling for you as well. It's pouring
Yes.
into other people and it's filling you up. Do you feel like, Rhonda, as it relates to this ability to listen to people non-judgmentally, and just it's almost kind of like it was just this inherent ability, like it was just in you. Do you feel like it was just in you, like even coming into the world, like this was maybe something that was a gift within you when you came into the world? Was it nurtured in you? What do you both?
Yeah. So I would say it was not in me, because I remember making fun of a child as a 7-year-old, making fun of that child's hair. And I remember my mother's response, and her response was, "If not for the grace of God, there go you." And she said, "You don't make fun of people who for things that they cannot control. That child's hair is like that because of their parents, not because of a choice that they've made. And so you don't make fun of others for things that are beyond their control." And I didn't get the lesson. You'd hope that I would. I still remember that, and I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. But a few years later, I got into an altercation because of my mouth. This mouth got me into trouble, and it got me out of trouble. But I was making fun of someone, and again, I was making fun of something that they could not control. And I have never seen my mother be more disappointed in me in her life. And so I was making fun of a child's clothes. I made up a rap song. I was really ugly with it. And she said to me, "You wear nice things, not because I can afford it, but because you have uncles and aunts who bless you. If not for them, you would be that person." And so, I had 2 black eyes, because I had really got beat up, honey. I got myself into a situation. Okay.
Yeah, I guess. Wow.
I look like a smooth criminal with the raccoon's eyes. And, but, she said to me, I wore hand-me-downs. She
Mhm,
was a seventh child. She didn't have new
mhm,
clothes. She wore the
mhm,
people's clothes above her. And she had been
mhm,
the victim of somebody like me making fun
mhm,
of her. And so she
mhm,
could not believe that she had raised a child that would make fun of other people.
mhm,
So when
mhm,
she had that conversation with me, I didn't need a spanking. I didn't need anything because she spanked me in the spirit. And I have always remembered, you don't make fun of people for that which is beyond their control. And in fact, you simply just don't make fun of people.
mhm. Wow, wow. So would it be true to say that between like in the people that were in your life really instilled values in you and raised you in such a way that, I mean, would that be fair? Because I'm hearing you referencing like these people in your life.
So I'm going to tell you, so it's so yes and no. So
Okay.
understand that I come from a big family. So in a big family, you have a lot of characters, right?
Mhm,
So you
mhm,
have some characters that have integrity, and then you have some characters that don't. And
mhm,
she didn't
mhm,
keep me away from any of the characters. Now, I would
mhm,
later learn from one of my aunts that my mother really did not want me to be around her. But the interesting thing was that was the aunt that led me to the Lord.
mhm,
But she was also the aunt with the most colorful past,
mhm.
right?
Okay.
So the person she was trying to protect me from actually was a person who invested in taking me to church, took me to Sunday school.
Mhm.
She told me that I insisted on getting baptized when I was 7. And she was like, no, your mom is going to be mad. And she said, I walked down that aisle myself and said, I want to get baptized. And she
Mhm.
was scared of what my mom would say. She was like, you can't tell your mom you got baptized.
Oh, wow.
So, so the, so sometimes the people that we are protecting, you can't predict what's going to happen. So I would
Mhm,
say to you, I did have some people who instill value in me, like everybody is worthy. But
mhm,
those same people were perhaps, drinking or cursing or gambling or bootlegging. I mean, you
mhm,
know,
mhm,
running clubs or something like that. And
mhm.
my mother still saw value in them.
Wow. I love that. It really shows how people can be very multi-layered
Mhm,
and so many parts to them,
mhm.
and that people can add value to our lives
And
despite
it's
of the
so
decisions that they
interesting.
make. Mhm,
And it's interesting now because, I really, now that I'm a mother, I wish that I could ask her some questions because I have to balance my wanting to protect my daughter from
mhm,
different elements and different things with what actually made me a compassionate individual, a loving
mhm,
individual. You understand?
mhm, mhm,
And so I remember
mhm,
my daughter saying something that struck me as ultra judgmental. And I
mhm.
realized that she was judgmental in part because of what she had heard at church, right?
Oh, wow.
And
Mhm,
so she was not as accepting as I am now, but this is her journey starting. So then to start
mhm,
to have these conversations, why do you assess her to be like that? What about
mhm,
this? Da 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 da. You know?
mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I'm hearing some of that takes some intentionality
Mhm.
to really help to
But I
nurture
think my
people.
mom was not intentional. I think it was just
Uh-huh.
like you. I mean, she was intentional about not letting me stay at other people's homes, right?
Mhm,
But
mhm,
she let me be around folks.
mhm.
I don't know. I don't know what to
Yeah.
make of her parenting style. It's completely a mystery to me.
Okay. All right. But it seems like one of the things that you're sharing is like it was multiple decisions made in her parenting style. And at the same time, it seems like at least one of those decisions was helping you to understand to not make fun of people who are
Mm.
not in control of certain aspects of their life. So it was certain things that she did instill in you that you still remember to this day.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you moved along your journey, so you were in school, at what point did you realize like I want to go down like the medical school path, right? Because psychiatrists, right, they go to medical school, that's kind of what they do. And then as they move along, they decide, okay, their specialty is psychiatry, that's their specialty in medicine. But like, I guess it's a two-part question. Like, when did that become clear, and kind of what helped you to, because not everybody, like once they realize that they want to do something and maybe you can get paid to do it, like sometimes it could be fear or whatever it is that are barriers to that person truly getting on the path to be able to birth that gift, right? So when we talk about like this interview series, it's a process. So it's a process in doing that. So I'm trying to understand for you, when you realize, oh, I can get paid for this, I can go down a certain path, like when did you realize medical school was a part of that, and what helped you to go ahead and pursue it?
Yes. So
Mhm.
I had grown up wanting to be a teacher. So when I started saying I was going to medical school, it was just
Mhm.
like, what? Where did that come from? And
Mhm.
I I started out as a psychology major,
Okay.
and then I realized, man, I have to take all these other pre-med classes. And so I pivoted to biology major. But I think a friend of mine was graduating. And when she showed me what her job offer was from Hendrix with a bachelor's in biology, I said, if I got to go to school the same amount of time, I need to pivot, because she was
Right.
a senior and I was a first year. And I was just like, this will not pay the bills. Now, mind you,
Okay.
I didn't realize bachelor's, a bachelor's
Mhm.
level, it was not going to make money. But in any event,
Mhm.
I was like,
Right.
I can't stay at Hendrix and have this kind of debt and then
Right.
go and so finances definitely came into play.
Sure.
And then I I would say I did not have confidence that I could do it, but I was surrounded by people who believed in me. And so when I
Mhm.
first started saying I was going to med school, it was like I would say it, but I would have this little in my stomach, like, oh, can I get into med school? Maybe I need to hush about this. But I continued to say it until I started to believe it a little bit. And then
Mhm.
I had people around me who would then pour into me. And I remember the very last day that I was to send in my AMCAS application, which is kind of like the GRE equivalent for medical people going into medical school. I
So like the
said,
test you take to allow you to have
right,
entrance into medical school. Gotcha.
right. And
Mhm.
so I was sending in my application and I said, oh, I'm not going to get in. People with
Mhm.
better GPAs than me, with better, da 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 da. And I wasn't going to send it in. And the guy I was dating at the time said, if you don't apply, it's an absolute no. But if you
Mhm.
do apply and you get in, and so the very last day that you could send it in, back when they had applications you actually had to mail in, I
Right.
turned it in on the counsel of the person that I was dating at that time, who said, let them tell you no, don't you tell yourself no. And the funny thing
Mhm.
is, when I started to date him, he was an engineering major. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're such a people person. Engineering is like, you can't waste your life in engineering. Sorry, engineers. But that was 30 years ago talking, okay? So and I'm going to throw in some of my best friends are engineers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like my
But
brother majored in engineering, so he did it. So there's some
sorry,
great
Mr.
engineers out there.
Holmes. But in any event, so he went into
Mhm.
medicine as well. So both of us went to medical school at the same time. Now we didn't marry or anything like that. But
Mhm.
as a result of that, of my influence, he became a doctor, and as a result of his influence, I became a doctor. So without
Mhm.
that interaction, we both would have gone down different paths.
Right. So it sounds like, so part of people being able to birth their gifts, at least in your process, the encouragement of the people that was in your life at that time.
Mm.
So sometimes we need people. We need people to
Mm.
encourage us, to give us a different perspective, to see maybe our capability and potential,
I
even
would
when
dare
we're
say
kind of
all the
fear.
time.
Okay.
Because there are
Oh,
people in your life who will see that something special in
mhm,
you that you don't
mhm,
even see it. Like we're multidimensional, we're multi-hyphenate, and many times we will focus in on that one gift that we receive praise for and
mhm,
neglect some of the other gifts that are not esteemed highly. And as I'm
mhm,
saying this, I'm thinking about David. Perhaps his family and friends liked him as a warrior, but they didn't see maybe much value in his poetry or in his
mhm,
musical abilities. But those
mhm,
musical abilities and those in that poetry, that's something that we're still benefiting today from in Psalms, you know,
mhm,
in different
mhm,
things. And so people will not always be able to identify and value your gift. And
mhm,
likewise, I was always being told, why can't you be more like your brother? My brother was quiet. He followed instructions the first time. I was curious. I was analytical. I asked why? I got on my mom's everlasting nerves all the time.
mhm,
She wanted me to be like my brother. And now I get paid to be a psychiatrist. I get paid to
mhm,
be a radio host. I'm a researcher. My why,
mhm.
my curiosity, my analytical abilities, that's what my gifts were. But I
Yes,
just didn't
yes.
recognize it.
Right. I love it. I'm just smiling so big because when I work with parents and so forth, that's just so great when adults can see that. And it's hard to see because
Mhm.
sometimes the way that comes out in childhood years can look different than how that manifests after some wisdom and all the things that can come out in adult years. But I like how you say that curiosity and that analytical nature, it seemed like that was there, that was within you. So
Mhm.
it's just like it's so great when adults are able to kind of pick up on that and hopefully nurture that. But yes, that's always been there. I love how you kind of connected that because I know you use it every day. I know you
I
use it every
do,
day.
I do, I do.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
and there
yes.
were adults in my life. My mom prioritized having me around teachers and people um, who had their act together. And there was this one lady who was a Sunday school teacher who would pick me up and take me to all these conventions in the AME church, Bethel AME, Miss Jones. And so she would take me around, and Miss Jones is the person who pulled out the speaking abilities. I was the only person, so I was the youngest person in my Sunday school class, but I was the only person that could read. The other kids couldn't read. And so she would always have me giving the Sunday school report. You know, I'm Rhonda Mattox, classroom number 5. We raised $2.07. You know,
Right.
our
All of
scripture lesson text is, and so I was the person who would, and so she got me accustomed to being in front of people, remembering those Easter speeches, all of that stuff. I loved it. They made such a hoo-ha over me, you know, having a long speech. And I didn't want any paper. I wanted to do it from memory, right?
uh-huh.
And so now I get paid to do professional speaking. Yes, Miss Jones, thank you, honey.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So it's like all of those abilities that was nurtured in you, probably on top of some of your natural abilities, or just are continuing to manifest
Yes,
themselves in your process even now. That's
yeah.
wonderful. So you did apply. You did apply to medical school. Clearly you got in. Clearly you got in. So if you could just walk us through that of when did it become clear when you got into medical school that now it's psychiatry? That you want to get into psychiatry. And if you, as you talk about that, if you don't mind, just kind of also shedding light on if there were any challenges in
Oh, yeah.
that process of medical
Yes.
school. Like I'm pretty sure it was like, because it may be some people watching that they really want to go into medicine. That's what they want to do, but they're concerned about how they are going to navigate challenges, because of whatever identity they bring in, a person of color,
Yeah.
a woman. So if you could talk through that, when you knew, okay, psychiatry, and then navigating different challenges in medical school.
So I knew that I knew I wanted to go into psychiatry before I got into medical school.
Ah,
Okay.
okay. Mhm.
Um, and I knew at Hendrix that I wanted to go into psychiatry because remember, I knew mental health. And so I was like, psychology, psychiatrist. Back then, I didn't know about therapist, or I probably would have done therapy. But
Mm.
I knew back then. I got into medical school, and medical school was so hard. Oh my God. It was absolutely the most torturous thing that I've ever gone through, because I was accustomed to being a smart kid. Okay.
Mm.
And so my identity was wrapped up in, you know, number one in the class. I did not know what it meant to make C's and D's and yes, F's. Okay.
Mm.
And so I really had to unpack my identity in Christ
Mm.
instead of my identity in being the smart one. And my mother did not believe in mental health. She thought depression was a luxury that Black people could not afford to have. So my mother had all these stigmatizing beliefs about mental health, as a
Mm.
person from the rural South might have, you know,
Mm.
in what would be her 70s or 80s now.
Mm.
So, you know, but she was just glad I was going to be a doctor. But she died while I was in medical school.
Mm.
And when she died, it was like the wind gone out of me. And I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to make her proud, but I was also going through this existential crisis. God, why did you let her die? Is what I thought. Now I realize that. But at the time, why did you let her
Mm.
die? Do I really want this? Um,
Mm.
and so while I was in medical school, it was like I stopped going to class, and
Mm.
I actually had to repeat a year because she developed cancer my first year. It spread because she wouldn't get treatment. I blame myself because if I just talked to her a little bit harder, if I shook her a little bit more, maybe she would be here. And so my comfort, my support system, God, who I'm mad at right now, my mom, who I'm mad at because she didn't get treatment and so she died, all of that is gone. And I
Mm.
felt like a motherless child. Okay. And
Mm.
so I started to, I wouldn't say that I was suicidal,
Mm.
but it was like I would have these images of me killing myself, but I
Mm.
wasn't, I don't know if that means, you know, so I saw it. I didn't have the means to do it, but I
Mm.
saw it. So it
Yeah.
was during a critical time when I was supposed to be studying for the boards, and I failed. And
Mm.
my identity is wrapped up tightly in
Mm.
me being, you know, a high achiever. And so I'm
Mm.
failing. I don't have the people who would normally get me back on track. I don't run to God because I'm mad at him, and I'm just floundering, right?
Mm.
And so Bill Bachnight, who I will love until the day I die and beyond, if that's possible, um, bless his soul, said to me, I think you're depressed. He called me to his office,
Mm.
said, you know, he had heard that I scored number one on the practice exam, and yet I failed my boards, which was a big deal because it was a very
Mm.
public failure. Everybody knew you had failed.
Mm.
And he said, I think you're depressed. And I thought, I'm not depressed, even though I was having these images of me
Mm.
dying, even though I
Mm.
wasn't brushing my teeth, even though I wasn't getting out of
Oh.
bed, even though my bed, my room looked horrible, so horrible that the janitor offered to clean my room. Who does that, right? So you know it looks bad. And so
Mm.
I am just, you know, struggling. He said, I think, you know, you're depressed and I'd like for you to see somebody. And so I'm having this dialogue with him. Yes. But in my head, I'm thinking, are you nuts? I'm not,
Mm.
you know, I'm going to take it to
Mm.
the Lord and he'll work it out. You know, I mean, like all of these
Mm.
colloquialisms that we
Yeah.
say. And so
Right.
he called um, the wellness person there, got her on the phone, and she agreed to see me. And so that was fine, but I wasn't going, you know.
Wow.
And he grabbed his keys and he drove me there. And I can
Mm.
honestly say to you that if not acted upon by that outside force, Mr. Bachnight was my angel that day,
Mm.
and I didn't realize it, that I might not be here with you. I might
Mm.
have taken my life. I have no idea because I was certainly
Mm.
imagining it. Even though I didn't think of myself as suicidal or depressed, I had
Mhm.
absolutely no insight into
Mhm.
um, how rock bottom I was going, none
Mm.
whatsoever. And because I didn't have my mother, who had been my rock, to say, should
Mhm.
be, you know,
Mhm.
brush your teeth, baby, get up. I didn't have any, I mean, I had people, but I had closed them out. Because there's some people that you can close out, but then there are other
Yeah.
people who will drive up there, knock on the
Right.
door, go get your RA and say, here I am. Because my mother had done that. She had come to, had the RA let her into my room before. Okay.
Oh, wow.
She
Okay.
didn't
Like
play. My
really, that
mother
it happened
did not
literally.
play. She was not going to be ignored. Okay.
Okay.
So I didn't have that. And I
Mhm.
was, I was thinking, and I will say, I never would have entered mental health treatment on my own, even though I wanted to be a psychiatrist, because even though I wanted to be a psychiatrist, I had stigmatizing beliefs about mental health that my mother had passed along to me.
Mhm.
And when I tell you now that me seeing a psychiatrist is the
Mhm.
best thing that could have ever happened to me, minus
Wow.
salvation. It really is, because that is where I unlearned some of the
Mhm.
strategies that had helped me to survive my childhood, um, but were no longer serving me. That is where I discovered me.
Mhm.
And that is why when someone is on the other side of the desk and they are resenting me, even though they chose me, I understand.
Mhm.
When someone
Mhm.
is struggling with feeling weak and not realizing that they have courageously chosen to invest in themselves, I
Right.
understand. I
Right.
understand resenting the person that you feel like you need, but you don't want.
Right.
I
Yeah.
completely understand.
You
And
understand it
so,
like you understand how it feels, what's going on in the mind of the
yes,
person, all
yes.
of it. Yeah.
And
Yes.
so I
Yeah.
will speak to that. And, and I will say, this is not about being strong or weak. This is
Mhm.
about having a very human moment. And
Mhm.
while in popular culture, we glamorize them not crying as being strong, when perhaps it's numb and perhaps it's not strong. So
Mhm.
it's not about being
Yeah.
strong or weak. It's about being human and
Right.
allowing yourself the gift of vulnerability.
Mm.
Vulnerability is a gift.
It
It's a
is. Yeah. It is a gift. It seems like it's necessary for growth, for
mhm,
transformation, and ultimately birthing your gifts. Like, I guess we have to be vulnerable in
mhm,
that process. And that was a moment, would you say for you, that was a moment of vulnerability?
mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had grown up with, yeah, my mother, she is something special. So I had grown up with a never let them see you sweat mentality. Don't
Mhm.
wear your feelings on your sleeves. And while I don't know that she intended to transfer that mentality to me, and when I was 7 years old in the second grade, I think I was in the second, I knew I was in the second grade. I brought home all A's and one B by Mrs. Crane in reading. I got a spanking for that B. Okay. Now this sounds like good grades. I'm proud of them. My mother said, you are an A student. You are the only Black person that some people will ever meet. You represent the Matlocks and you represent Black people. You will make A's if there are any A's to be made. And so from that point on, the weight of Black America was
Oh, wow.
on my 7-year-old shoulders. Okay.
Wow. Wow. Oh my goodness.
And so,
Okay.
that, and and so the message that she was attempting to communicate with me was that you
Mhm.
are a smart cookie and you can do it. But the
Mhm.
message that she did communicate to me unwittingly was, it was not about the process, it was about
Mhm.
the outcome. So
Wow.
I began becoming more outcomes driven, make an A at all costs, da 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 da, even to the point
Mhm.
of, I remember in fourth grade, like cheating on a social studies test and getting in trouble because of
Oh, you
course I
did get
was
trouble.
a good cheater, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so then she had to come back and correct, no, you're not, if you don't get this information, you know, people cannot take what you know.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
not just about the grade, it's about you getting the information as well. They can take your
Okay.
husband, your wife, your car, but they cannot take your knowledge.
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know.
So she helped you understand that that was valuable.
Mhm,
The knowledge that you attained was valuable.
mhm,
Okay. So if we could kind of, I guess, go back to kind of what you were saying, where you were in that position where it's like, man, that angel from the Lord just facilitated you getting the assistance that you need. How did you, other than that, obviously that was a big part of it. What else helped you to, you feel like, kind of recover from that in a way that allowed you to get back on your path um,
mm.
in medicine?
I'm going to say that the regret that I have is that I resented the process so much, right?
Mm,
So,
mhm,
I could have been better quickly if I didn't have such stigmatizing beliefs about mental health. So
mm,
I would take medicine, get better, then I stop taking it, then get worse. Take medicine, get better, and then stop taking it, get worse. Take medicine and
mm,
declare by faith, I am healed, and then get worse. And
mm,
so it wasn't like a straight journey. I got
mm,
help and got better. I didn't. I was like or whatever. And so
mm,
what could have been a 4-year process because I would not get the help that I need consistently. I mean, it was prolonged well beyond what it should have been, you know.
mm.
Um, and I'm sorry. Let me make sure I understand your question. What was your question
No,
again?
no, no. You're going with it because I'm
Okay.
wondering about your process of kind of, I'm using the word, recovery, but really just after that moment when it became clear where somebody helped you to see this may be depression. So I'm wondering kind of how you kind of got back on the path. But what you're saying, it wasn't linear. It wasn't just that moment and now I had intervention and I'm better. Like it was ups and downs and it was a lot
Yeah.
involved that you said that was prolonged while at the same time you did graduate and you did get
Mhm.
into your career. So I'm just kind of wondering is like what helped you to, even though it's up and down, still kind of keep going forward.
It was interesting because I'm going to say my psychiatrist did. Now,
Mm,
you would, I really want to say like my faith did, but what I will tell you is my faith, I don't know how this is going to land, but my faith was almost a part of the problem.
mm.
Okay.
Oh,
Because
understand.
I had God in this box. And so in my mind, I was supposed to be healed through prayer. And what I didn't get was, if you're a person of faith, there were times when maybe Jesus prayed, spoke, spit, I mean, just there were times in the Bible when people went and dipped in water. And so it was not about the recipe, it was about the giver of the recipe. It was about
Mm,
me being obedient and following instruction. And I remember when my eyes were opened, um, and people of faith who are listening will understand this because I mean, I was just like so angry, like, God, why are you doing this to me? Like so at the time I had this concept of God being in control and he was the reason all of this stuff was happening. I no longer subscribe to that, but that's what I was thinking. And so um, I remember getting revelation. Um, in my spirit as it related to Hezekiah. And so everybody knows the story of Hezekiah. Many people know the story of Hezekiah. Um, you know, a person who the prophet went and said, "Hey, get your house in order. You're about to die." Then Hezekiah turns his face to the wall and he's praying. And then the prophet, the Lord gives the prophet a word back. Okay, I'm going to give you this time. And and so in my mind, the story is God heals him. But when you
mm,
go and you read the story,
mhm,
there were figs applied to the boils, which was the medical modality of that day. Okay.
mm,
And so and that seems small to you all who are listening. But for me, that was like,
mm, mhm.
okay. Because when my brother found out I was on medicine, he went and told my pastor, she on that
Mm.
stuff. You would have thought I was on crack cocaine, getting it,
Wow,
getting
that
it
stuff.
in the, getting it in an alley or whatever. And
Okay.
so there was this really this shame that I
Mm,
had for needing
mm,
medicine, for
mhm,
prayer not working for me. It was like this shame, and I liken it to the woman who touched the hem of Jesus's garment, and she
mhm,
was going to just be healed and then walk away and do it quietly. And then Jesus said, you know, who touched me? Right.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so my process was such a public one because I had failed the
mhm,
boards, and everybody in your class knows you failed the boards. And
mhm,
then my brother tells my pastor, and then I'm in this church, and so then some of the people who were leaders, not my pastor, not his wife, but some of the leaders that other people looked to, really had held stigmatizing beliefs as well. I can't blame
mhm,
them because I held stigmatizing beliefs. So I'm not trying to throw any shade, but their beliefs plus my beliefs
mhm.
meant I was hindered, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm,
and so it just took me time to unlearn all of
mm,
those years of stigmatizing beliefs that I had
mhm,
about how
mhm,
healing was supposed to happen. And the
mhm,
fact that I wasn't supposed to need it because I
mm.
was the smart one. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I've heard you use this word a few times, unlearning.
Mhm,
So it seems like you had to do some unlearning
mhm.
regarding just general messages that you were given, religious messages that you were given, just familiar messages, like whatever it is, unlearning in a number of ways. And that unlearning, would you say that started to sort of remove those barriers and help you over time? I'm sure this happened over time. And then you
It
were
did
able,
happen.
okay, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was the catalyst though, was this
Mhm,
little petite white woman who would say
mhm,
to me, "Why are you smiling?" Because there were two emotions that were acceptable in my home, for my mom. One was happy and one was anger. So
mhm,
you didn't, if I showed sad, I didn't get to be sad. I
mhm,
could be angry as long as it wasn't directed at her, or I could be happy. But sadness was not an emotion that I was
mhm,
able to manifest. Those were the only two. So I'm
mhm,
in therapy, talking about whatever. I don't even remember what it was. And she said to me, "Why are you smiling?"
mhm,
You know? And so I had this set of eyes now who is asking me questions. Why are you doing this? And I've been
mhm.
like a little Forrest Gump, because mom said, because mom said, because mom said, you know,
Uh-huh,
you know.
uh-huh.
And so as I'm having to give my answers, and they are, that nobody had ever asked me before because I just did it and people didn't
Mhm,
challenge you. You just did what you did. Well, now I'm having to say this stuff out loud. And as you say stuff out loud, sometimes you
mhm,
realize how off it can sound, you know.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, and so she was a person who gave me permission to not be perfect,
Okay.
to
Mhm,
be flawed,
mhm,
and to dance with my shadow and be okay
mhm,
with it. The
mhm,
message that I'd heard all of my life was, you're the only Black person that some people are going to ever see.
mhm.
And so
Okay.
that's
So that
heavy.
didn't leave a lot of room, it didn't sound like,
Yeah.
for
So
learning and for growing and for maybe being flawed in some ways.
not at all, not at all. If there
Yeah.
was some chance that I might fail, I wasn't going to
Mhm,
take the risk of public failure. And what I will
mhm,
say now, the greatest gift that I learned was from Congressman John Dingell, who is credited with authoring the House version of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. I was his
mhm.
policy advisor while that was rolling out. And
Wow.
the thing that he said to me when I would be disappointed because some bill that we had worked really hard on did not pass, and I would be like, "Oh, it failed." He said, "We don't fail. We
Mhm,
learned, we made friends, we made progress. If you learn, you make friends, you partner with people, and you make progress, oh, darling, you've not failed. You made
mhm.
progress." And
I
so,
love it.
you know,
Wow. Man,
So
it
now
sounds
I
like
don't
you've had
think
a
in terms of fail or win.
wow.
I think in terms of progress.
In terms of progress, partnering, growing, learning. That's
Mhm.
not failure at all. I love it. I love it. Man, I like how you hang on too to these nuggets, these valuable pieces of information that you've learned over the years, even from childhood. That's
Mhm.
amazing. So as you move forward, I know we're probably, by me asking this question, I'm probably going to jump over like years, but I do wonder at what point, because you're right now involved, you just mentioned that they're involved in advocacy, that's like kind of the political realm. You mentioned being involved with radio shows, so you've been involved in other entertainment, media, and of course, like I've seen you more in the through being involved in the community and being involved in professional organizations. So, what made you? Because some people might think as a psychiatrist or a mental health professional, their view may be working with patients. And of course, that direct care is a very important part of it, and people do that. But I'm hearing you talk about other hats that you wear: professional organizations, community, media, policy. What made you start to go down those paths?
It's easy. I never was remotely interested in policy. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not interested in it now. But this is what happened. I just wanted to mind my business and see
Okay.
patients. But the policies kept getting in my business and making it hard for me to see patients. I never, ever wanted to do any policy. That is like the pinnacle, the zenith of boredom for me, right? I mean, I remember being at UCLA and Bob, I can't think of Bob's last name, Bob and Jose, the teachers. And I was just like, I don't want this. I don't need this. I mean, I gave them such a rough time because I did not want it. I didn't need it. And so, and yet that is, and so I got into it because I was championing for patients. And so I remember going to, I remember going to my attendings when I was in residency saying, you all need to teach us how to champion for patients. We need more to learn how to talk to legislators. And I got into it because I felt like I was wasting my life. And so I put together this list of what I wanted to do because I had a couple of fellowships and I was doing patient care. So I put together this list and my friend said, that sounds like a consultant. And I was like, I don't know, but this is what I want to do. So the next morning I woke up and I had an invitation, like I had for the last 6 years, to work on doing policy. And I was opening up my laptop to type in, thank you for thinking of me. I'm so honored you thought of me, but no. And then I heard the conversation I'd had the night before about what I wanted to do. And I realized that that they'd been asking me to do for the last 6 years was everything I just said I wanted to do. But good God, it was in Washington, D.C.
Wow. Wow. So if I could just point out something, so it didn't come in a package that you thought it was going to come in. So people have to
No.
remember it may come in a very different package. It may look different. It may be called different. The title, the role may be different from what you expect. So let's say like there's one thing that I'm hearing. But another one is that you talked about writing something down, right? Because sometimes I
Write the
wonder
vision, make it plain.
there you go. I love it. Write the vision, make it plain. Because I wonder sometimes when people are going along their path, if they don't write the vision and make it plain, if they don't have some way where they have either articulated or written down something that they want to do, how would they know that this is it when they open their laptop and see an email or see some type of, information about maybe a role or position? So where did that come from for you to write this down and make a list? Like what made you do that?
I'm going to tell you, I've been a writer my entire life. And so my daughter she's an answer to my prayer. She is everything I wrote down that I wanted. My husband, same thing. He is everything I wrote down that I wanted. Whenever I write down what I want, it lets me know when it's given to me by God, as opposed to when it's an imitation, you know? And so I always write it down because I truly, I have good self-esteem, because I believe that my daddy wants the best for me.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I tell him what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
then he doesn't give me rocks. He doesn't give me snakes. He gives me what I want at the appropriate time that I'm mature enough to receive it. And sometimes
okay.
he gives me much better, but he gives
Mm-hmm.
me, you know.
Okay. And that's your belief system, like that's in you. You know that.
Oh,
It's almost when you said that, it's like, oh my goodness, Rhonda is fully convinced. She is
I'm,
fully persuaded that
yeah,
that is true. Yeah, I love
absolutely.
it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
My daddy loves me. He wants the
Mm,
best for me. And
mm,
I am in him and he's in me. And
right.
so he has given me the desires of my heart, meaning not that I had the desire and then he gave it to me, but he placed these desires in my heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
That's
if
wonderful.
these desires were placed in my heart by God, then
Mm-hmm.
he is capable and fully
Mm-hmm.
able to help me
Mm-hmm.
give birth to what he
Yeah,
placed in my heart.
wonderful. Amen to that. Amen to that. And it's like with all of that process, because you said a lot, we could probably sit here for the next 30 minutes and just unpack what you just said, right? But all of that, though, positioned you to then continue on with birthing your gifts, to go on to that position. So, Rhonda, I think I'm gonna fast forward a little bit more because I think I love that. We might have to have a part two. There's several people when I talk with them, I'm like, we don't have to have a part two. You might be one of those people. But if you could let us know in all of that is at least a couple more questions that I have, but in after the time, like when you really got in your career and then you realize maybe this is policy, maybe it's this, and you've worked with professional organizations, you've worked with media and entertainment. What do you feel like is something that you've learned with the different roles that you've been in, learned about yourself, learned about the Lord, learned about other people? What have been some lessons learned?
One can chase 1,000 and two can chase 10,000. I
Mhm.
can, I can make an impact by myself, but
Mhm.
when I can humble myself and hear other people work together, compromise on things that are not deal breakers for me,
Mhm.
we can accomplish so much more. And
Mhm.
for me, one of my directors when I was in Robert Wood Johnson Clinical Scholars Program was Ken Wells. Before I would meet with Ken Wells, I would have thought about it inside, outside, every which way. And I would go
Mhm.
and meet with Ken, and he would take my seed, my idea, and he would amplify.
Uh-huh.
And so I
Uh-huh.
would there, you know, and I finally realized that's what he's there for. You know, for
Mhm.
me, mentors have been everything because
Mhm.
mentors take away some of the struggle. They
Mhm.
they see beyond what you see and help you get over the hurdles much quicker.
Mhm.
So for me, the greatest lesson that I have learned is that mentors are everything when you have the
Mhm.
right one. And you
Right.
want a mentor who is confident, that does not see you as competition.
Mm. That part. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it seems like in that space, they can create a safe and compassionate space for you to grow and provide those opportunities in a way that they don't feel threatened. Right.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. What do you see next for yourself? If you
Uh,
think about it, as you move along further birthing your gifts, because that's a continual process, right? It's not like we birth them and we're done, right? It could be a continual birthing. So yeah, what's next for you, you think?
I actually envision that I will not be doing as much patient care as I've done in the past, because when I do patient care, I can see 6 or 7 people in a
Mm-hmm.
day, based on the way I practice. But when I do public speaking, when I do consulting and coaching and policy work, the work that I do can change millions of lives. You know,
Mm-hmm.
some of the work that I'm proudest of, work that I did on 90210. I normally see 7 or 8 people a day, maybe sometimes three or
Mm-hmm.
four. But I worked on this episode, I want to say maybe in 2010, 2011. The character in 90210 then, and I wasn't a consumer of 90210 before or after. I worked on 5 episodes. And the 5th episode, a character named Silva was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So I helped the writers and the producers understand how that would manifest in real life. And so you saw the buildup. And then after the 5th episode, the Off the Tracks episode, it's revealed that she has bipolar disorder. But then following that, there's a public service announcement. We partnered Hollywood and Health Society, or Health and Hollywood Society, that partnered with SAMHSA. We did this probably 60-second public service announcement where the character that plays Silva talks about what bipolar disorder is, how it manifests, and where you can go to learn more about it. SAMHSA's spike in bipolar, in them looking for bipolar disorder, over 1 million, I think. And in those, consulting on those 5 episodes, I reached more than 1 million people. And that's when I had the aha moment. I have to involve media. And then the policy side, I mean, I wish I could tell you that I was like some champion, hero, I don't want to be part of politics. I'm really not political. I'm very much a truth teller. And that's just not who I think I am. But I had to be involved in making sure that patients were not, that it was equivalent, that they wouldn't max out on the amount they could spend on hospitalizations, that they would have access to affordable health insurance, even if they had asthma or if they were a woman. Because if you were a woman, your healthcare could be more expensive. And so, but I needed my folks to be able to get quality healthcare that was affordable. And so when it was time, I really struggled because, listen, family, I was making 6 figures. And while being the policy advisor to Congressman Dingell may sound impressive, I took a serious pay cut to go and work for Congressman Dingell. I mean, when I say serious, I mean a serious pay cut. It was not a happy place to work. What we're seeing now in politics was there. It was all already there. It's just amplified now, but it was just like what you all are seeing. That's the way it was behind closed doors, but we weren't talking about it. And so that is the most difficult job I've ever had because it was so cutthroat. I cried all the time while I was there, but I knew I was there for such a time as this.
Wow. Okay. You knew you were there for a purpose, on purpose.
I mean, I was just like, I want to go home, God.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. 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 It sounds like you pressed through. God helped you. So much probably helped you during that time. Rhonda, as you were talking, one thing that I remembered in a previous conversation that we talked about is I think you're an author because you said you've always written, you've always been. So I'm like, look at it. You talking about that's yet another hat. So I said we could not wrap up this conversation without talking about that. Please let us know about that.
Absolutely. Okay, so I've been a writer my entire life. I've always written. But my writing is where I am most vulnerable. And so I've always kept it to myself. I have a memoir that has really been done probably for about 3 years. Pray for me, family, as you listen, because the title of it is God Heard My Cry. Okay. And it has been done, but it is I'm so vulnerable in it that I have not released it. And I will do readings from it from time to time, but I don't want to release it while I am still doing patient work. It's been a part of it. And so as I transition out of patient care, I'll release it. But that is, it brings me joy because I wrote it. When I started writing it, I was not writing it from a healed place. But
Mm,
as I wrote it, it was inner child work. It was
mm,
really something that was therapeutic at times, but at times it took me, when I traveled back down, some of those memories were very, very dark and very
mm,
hard. And so
mm,
it would take me to dark places.
mm,
But the spirit of the book, even though it deals with some challenging topics,
mm,
is really light and
mm,
and fun, and you can see the healing. And so I look forward to when I am courageous enough to release that. And I've
mm.
also written a journal, Take Five, Pathway to Peace. And so I've done some things, and you all just pray for me that I will release it because it is done. Um,
Okay.
it is done. I just got to get it out. And it's so funny because if you go back and look at my interviews, every year I say I'm going to release it. But I think either fear or pride or something has hindered me. But I'm ready now. I'm ready.
Mhm.
I'm
I love you.
80% ready. Let me say that. I won't say I'm
Okay.
completely ready. I'm 80% ready. And
Yeah.
my prayer for it is that the anointing will destroy the yokes, that it will
Mm,
deliver people, that it will set them free, and that they will no longer be bound by public opinion.
mm,
They can
mm,
be okay with not being perfect, because you've heard me say many times there was this facade I needed. And so
mm,
the freedom that I have now to just be my
mm.
authentic, flawed, imperfect self,
Love
it
it.
is so wonderful that I want
Hmm.
that for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. But please release it, birth it, all the things. We're praying for you, praying with you, because as you're saying, it's going to minister to people and bless people. So, yes, yes, we're going to keep our eyes out for that from Dr. Rhonda Mattox. So, meanwhile, though, I know you continue to put out very helpful information on social media and other spaces. So, where can people, if they want to follow you, kind of hear some of what you're putting out, where can they follow you?
Yes. So you'll see at Dr. Rhonda Mattox, by my name. That is my social media tagline for Facebook. I think Twitter, though I don't do Twitter much, for Instagram and for LinkedIn. I do a couple of things with media. I do Impact Zone, a radio show on Rejoice 103.3 and 105.5 every Monday, 11:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you follow me on Facebook, and I would really encourage you to do so, you'll see, and you can click on the links and get there. I also do I'm Not Crazy But on blackdoctor.org. And it is I'm not crazy, but that is a comment that I hear all the time. And then right behind the but is something that people feel ashamed of, or a little bit insecure about. And so we deal with those things that are behind the but, and give people the freedom to live their best life and to not judge themselves so harshly, to show themselves some grace. That's
Yeah.
every Thursday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, and 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And it is so much fun. And let me just tell you, it's not like what you have in mind for what a doctor talks about. It's more like a dialogue. We have fun. Sometimes we deal with some most of the time we're dealing with heavy stuff, but we deal with it many times in some ways to where it's light, there's laughter, and there's learning. And then afterwards,
Mm,
you can launch and
mm.
be about your father's business.
Oh, I love it. And you said that's on the blackdoctor.org
Mhm.
platform. How do people, could they just go to that website,
Yeah, so you can
blackdoctor.org?
you can go to the website and then scroll down to Facebook, or you can just get on Facebook and get in the search engine and look for blackdoctor.org. And I know a lot of times people will think, blackdoctor.org, I mean, like, is this like segregated or whatever? And my answer to you is no. There are a lot of health disparities in the Black community. And there are not a lot of people who are paying attention to it in a way
Mhm.
that is meaningful and impactful. And so you'll have a lot of people studying our issues, but they leave it at that. We want to go beyond the discussion into action And so at blackdoctor.org, it is people who are just comfortable in their own skin, who are telling you what you need to hear. And think about it like your grandmama Nim. Now, you know what Nim is, and them
Yeah.
sitting
Right,
on the back porch under the shade tree telling you, Sugar Bee, you need to stop drinking all that. You're going to get the sugar, you know. And so we use your language
right, right,
to
right,
talk
right.
to you.
I love it. So hopefully people can check you out at Dr. Rhonda Mattox, Facebook. You said LinkedIn, Instagram, a little bit on Twitter, and then Impact Zone. They can go to your page and find out more about Impact Zone, which is a radio show, and then blackdoctor.org. You're on that platform as well. Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Rhonda. This has
Oh,
been
thank
great. This has been
you.
great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, this is great. I know people are going to be blessed by it. I know I was. So thank you again. It's been another edition of Birthing the Gifts. It's a process conversation series. Thank you again for joining us today, Dr. Mattox. Much appreciated.